Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Today with Todd. I'm glad you could join me this morning. I hope you're doing well today. If you're joining me live or you're watching the replay, then I just ask for your prayers today. I need your prayer. I was playing soccer last night and tore my calf muscle. I'm in a lot of pain today, but I decided I'm going to continue on and come on today and talk with you about that God, He doesn't just bless need. He doesn't bless need. God blesses faith. Hey, Gregory, good to see you this morning. So I'm going to be talking to you from Genesis chapter 22 this morning. If you're familiar with Genesis chapter 22, it starts off saying this, that God tested Abraham. What did God test Abraham in? Well, God tested Abraham in faith. And I'm going to talk to you about that this morning. So keep me in your prayer this morning. Like I said, I tore my calf muscle last night playing soccer, and it is very, very painful. So if I don't seem quite myself, then know why, all right? Well, I want to talk to you about this, that in understanding when you are in a relationship with God, that He will ask you to give things up. What do I mean by that? He will ask you to let things go. And this is what I find in Genesis chapter 22 that God did with Abraham. He told him, I want you to sacrifice your son, your only son. So you have to know that when you're in a relationship with God, that He will ask you to let go of people, things, possessions, even relationships. Thank you, Gregory. I need your prayer today. You know, there's something that became aware to me early this morning, is that you will have to let go of what's in your hand in order to receive what's in God's heart. Let me say that again. You will have to let go of what's in your hand to receive what's in God's heart. I call this the law of the seed. So we see in Genesis 22 that God tells Abraham, I want you to sacrifice Isaac. I want you to sacrifice Isaac, your son. And God says, this is your only son. Now you have to pay attention very closely to the scripture, because we find that Abraham had another son, and his name was Ishmael. But God has called Isaac his only begotten son. So there's a difference between a begotten son and a son. So pay attention to that. That's not my point today, though. So this son that he's talking about, Isaac, this was going to be the son of promise. He's the son of promise. He is the promised son to Abraham. And one of the things that we have to understand about this, that this is a principle that we see, that when you're in a relationship with God, He's going to ask you to give things up. You know, when God asks you to let go of something that's in your hand, and this was his seed. Abraham had a seed, and his seed was Isaac. It was his son. His son was his seed. And I'll read that to you in just a minute. You have to let go of the seed that is in your hand, because God has a harvest on His mind. When God asks you to let go of a seed that is in your hand, that's because God has a harvest on His mind. Now, a seed is something that you possess. At this point, Abraham possesses Isaac, because this is his son. This is the son that he is molding, he is shaping to become his heir. And this seed is going to become the sacrifice. This seed is going to become the sacrifice. You know, when God saw the earth was out of order, He sowed His son into the earth that He might reap a family. And that son was a sacrifice. You have to know that anytime that God is talking to you about a seed, that He's also talking to you about a sacrifice. So if you're just coming on, and you may have to go back and watch the beginning of this to know what I'm talking about exactly. You will have to let go of what's in your hand in order to receive what's in God's heart. Now we find in Genesis chapter 22 that Abraham calls the name of that place, he calls it Jehovah Jireh. Most of the time we say that means that God will provide. You know, that's the Christian cliche of it. And it's because Abraham said to Isaac said, "Hey, Dad, where is the sacrifice? I see the wood, I see the knife, but, where's the lamb?" And Abraham said, God will provide for himself a sacrifice. So it says that Abraham, he laid the wood in order. Don't skip over that. But he laid the wood in order, and he bound his son, and he laid him upon the wood, and he took a knife in his hand to sacrifice Isaac. We find that an angel calls out to Abraham and tells him, don't do this. So anyway, about Jehovah Jireh, we see that if you were to study this in Greek, it means that God will see, or he will see to it. He will see to it. So what does this have to do with me saying that God doesn't bless need, but he blesses faith? Let me just go ahead and give you this. Abraham needed a son. Abraham needed a son because God had already blessed Abraham. The Bible tells us in Genesis 13 that Abraham, he was wealthy. He has gold, silver, and cattle. God appeared to Abraham and told him that he said, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to be a great reward to you. I'm going to reward you greatly. Abraham's response was, well, who am I going to leave all this to? You have to understand that Abraham did not have himself in mind. And this is where we go wrong many times when we are thinking in the terms of the law of the seed. Abraham was not thinking of himself. He is thinking of his legacy. He is thinking of, who am I going to leave all this to? I've got all this stuff. Who's heir to it? And he said, I've got this servant Eleazar. He doesn't have the right mind. He has a servant's mind. He doesn't have the mind to receive an inheritance, Eleazar. So he says, I need a son. God, I need a son. So God tells him, I'm going to give you a son. So we can see here that, God does not respond just to need. God responds to faith. God doesn't bless need. God blesses faith. And this is where we begin to see where Abraham is going to sacrifice Isaac, and this is going to be an act of faith. So anytime that we are talking about a seed, that is the operation of faith. And Abraham believed. This is what the Bible tells us. Abraham believed that if he sacrifices Isaac, that God will raise him up from the dead. That is the law of the seed. A seed must first fall into the ground and die, and then resurrection happens to it in order that it comes back to life and produces more than that which it was. That is the law of the seed. So let me tell you this. When you're in a relationship with God, whatever you are gripping, whatever you're holding on to, whether it's people or ideas, and maybe it's even promises. This was a promise to Abraham, but he's holding on to it. He's holding on to that promise. If you want God to bless it and to multiply it, then you're going to have to let go of it in faith. Let me say that again. If you want God to bless it and to multiply it, whether it's a promise, whether it's people, whether it's an idea, whatever it is you're holding on to, you're going to have to let go of it in order for God to bless it and to multiply it. You will have to let go of it in faith. You could say today, well, I have a seed in my hand. You have the choice. If it was a seed of corn, if you've ever planted corn, I have, it looks just like it's a kernel of corn. You can either eat it, or you could just hold on to it, or you could plant it in the ground. The only way that you're going to get a harvest from it is to let it go. And this is where we see the law of the seed, that God doesn't bless need, he blesses faith. And this is what we see with Abraham. He needed a son, but he had to have faith in order for that son to be blessed. So God doesn't bless need, he blesses faith. Abraham needed a son, but God blessed Abraham's faith. What did God do? Let me read this to you. Genesis 22 and verse 16. This is what God said. By myself have I sworn, says the Lord, for because you have done this thing. What did Abraham do? He let go of his only son. He let go of the promise. He let go of it in faith. And he said, this is my seed. Isaac is my seed. I let it go. I let it go in faith. And this is where God blesses it and multiplies it. He says, because you've done this thing and you haven't withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven and as the sand which is upon the seashore. Your seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. He shall possess the gate of his enemy. So we can see here that not only God causes the seed to be blessed, but he causes the seed to be multiplied, and he causes the seed to possess that which was his enemies. So he says, in your seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. That's where it's all falls down to, is that faith has to walk out obedience. Faith has to walk out in obedience. It has to walk out obedience. Hey, thank you for joining me today. Keep me in your prayer. Like I said, in a lot of pain today. I tore my calf muscle playing soccer last night, and if I don't seem quite myself, then please understand that I'm feeling it today. So thank you for joining me today. This was Today with Todd. Hey, I want you to know that God doesn't bless need, he blesses faith. I'll see you tomorrow, 9:05. I'm live at 9:05. If you want to know more, you can join. You can go to my website, and it's wisdomforbeyond.com. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.